out there, and we're going to say a few things here that's going to raise a few eyebrows, and we're going to try not to go outside the boundary lines of uh, fam- a family program because this weekend has been very traumatic for me. I've been listening to a lot of airheads on television, and some of the ones that are not necessarily airheads, but just people that are so corrupt that they and they should. I say they're corrupt because they should know better, and what they're saying is just so far out of the pale, and they should know what they're saying does not meet the smell test or any other test. And for them to be saying the things they were saying, and I'm talking, and I will call the name out. I'm not going to be beating around the bush about what I'm talking about. I was watching Mark Levine's program last night. I watched the Saturday night program, and I was disgusted with that. And then to borrow from Amos and Andy, I guess I have to borrow from there to get some humor into it. And now I was regusted when I watched the program. I was regusted last night because they had they first of all they had this guest on, and he was talking about there were three kinds of this he found presumptive. What was that word he used? Presumptive. Where the president is given a pass. What they use a word here. I'm too mad to even think about it. I'm so worked up. Uh, a presumptive where the president is being excused for things while he's in office, and they found, and one guy came on. He found uh, where the Constitution gives the president they were talking about immunity, absolute immunity, and then there's presumptive immunity, and then there is something that the president can do while in office that has no immunity whatsoever. Now, as to where they're taking that from and what Constitution they're reading from is not the one on earth, or certainly not the one that was drawn up initially before it was ratified, drawn up in Philadelphia in 1787 and passed as a draft to be given to the states for ratification on the 17th of September 1787. And then the amendments added therein too, starting with the first 10 amendments in 1791. The Constitution ratified in 1788, and then the 3 years later, the first 10 amendments added to the Constitution called the Bill of Rights, and so on and so forth. The Bill of Rights. You know, there's just so much noise being made. A Bill of Rights, when the whole document, the whole Constitution, is a Bill of Rights because it acts as a bill of particulars, to restrain what government can and cannot do, based upon setting up barriers around the government and barriers, a hedge around the people that ought to be protected by first of all, the government doing the protective role, and then the hedge from the government to the people, because the people need to be protected from their government. And that's what Federalist Paper 51 is about. But when I hear these clowns, and I think Mark Levine is a jerk for what he had on his program this weekend, that is it's so disgusting to hear these people talking about uh, levels of where you get presumptive immunity and all. Where does it come from? People tell people talking about presumptive. The president has presumptive um, immunity, and he has in some areas absolute immunity, and then there is no immunity, and now you need a search warrant to find out which is which as you go looking for what the acts are the president has committed in the presidency, where it is partially, he has partial immunity, so maybe something in the sentence it can go, and this part can go, and the other part cannot go, and now you this is uh, what what's that hunt they go on, treasure hunt. So you now got to go on a treasure hunt and try to ferret out within the sentences or within the actions which part is covered, so the president cannot be uh, brought up for um, some retribution because he has immunity in this part, but maybe in the other part of his action, there's no immunity. We got to figure out where the immunity is and where the immunity is not. We got to search for which is which, and so on and so forth. If that makes any sense to you, let me just tell you something. These people are playing games with your intelligence. And when you start making comments like were made by that guy, I don't even want to remember the guy's name that was talking about presumptive immunity. You can presume that this is covered. You can't presume maybe that's covered, and then there's no question about some of the other actions are covered. In other words, that would be the one that's the part that has absolute immunity. So the president cannot be called for that because the immunity is absolute, and therefore the president can act within that domain as he will. Well, I just want you to tell me, all you people saying things like that, and you're running roughshod over the document. Where did you what part of the document are you quoting that can be found so we can check behind you? I don't have to check behind you because I know the document very well, better than anybody in the country. But you show me where you found it. I don't have to have you give me an answer to that because I know you can't find it because it's not in there. Because it's not in there. And when Mark Levine last night was embarrassing himself, I should say embarrassing himself. I know that's not grammatically correct, but that's the level in which I have to speak to show how outraged I am at them mislabeling what's found in Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2. I'm going to read it to you in the Constitution, and then you tell me where. And then you tell me if you saw that program last night. You go back there and look at that program again, and you go and tell me where what Mark Levine was saying last night about Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2 can be sustained by what the document says. Because in that provision of the Constitution, it says that they were saying that they were trying to bring in Joe Biden's disability. That's another thing they were doing to show they have no respect for your intelligence. You are looking at the man having a disability, and they don't want to call him on it by the institutionalization, by the calling for the upon the institutionalization of the amendment that was there to deal with a president that's been disabled while in office, and what happens when there is that disability, so that the presidency can still perform the duties that have been assigned to it by Article 2 of the Constitution of the United States. And so the 25th Amendment, which really is the disability, I call it the Presidential Disability Amendment. What happens when the president is unable to fulfill his responsibilities. You got to deal with that because it comes in the aftermath of what had happened to John F. Kennedy, and the line of succession was not clearly drawn out, and that needs to now be fixed. And so the 25th Amendment is added to the Constitution for that reason, to make sure that the country is not left, what's the word here? Is not left without leadership, in which the country becomes vulnerable because of the absence of that leadership. You can't have that happening if the president is even if the president goes under because he is having anesthesia given to him, and he's just going to have a tooth pulled, and that puts him out of commission for 30 minutes because he might be sedated and incoherent for as long as 30 minutes. We can't even afford that. And so when the president is going into any kind of surgery, before that, the president then, if he is really respectful of the office, will turn over the reins. So before that happens, so that while he's under the sedation, the country does not miss a beat because the president is unable, just within that 30-minute window. You might say, well, 30 minutes, only 30. Well, yeah, but what if they're sending missiles over here at the time that sedation takes place and the president is unable to act? You want to avoid that for any period of time. And for us to have avoided it, knowing that this man, that first of all had usurped the presidency, and because he was unfit to be president, and we knew that the man was unfit to be president in 2023, if not earlier. But anybody that could not see the unfitness of Biden in that office, and you have to convince me even today that this man that served under Obama, and Obama never got more than 69 million votes, and then the man that served under him that's much more that's incoherent, that did not have the crusade type of campaign that Obama had, but this man had 81 million votes. Obama never got more than 69.2 million votes, and he got more votes than Obama got in 2020, which you would have to have that many votes to then undo Trump's vote, because Trump vote went from 63 million in 2016 to 75 million, because he picked up 12 million more votes in 2020. So you had to top that. Now this man is getting unable to put a sentence together, and they tell us he had 12 million votes that Obama got. These people are insulting our intelligence in this country, just telling us anything. And the people are so, I hate to say this, but people in America are so dumb. You can tell them anything. You have all these libraries. You know, when I went to Las Vegas, the first thing I did, and every time I go, I have a timeshare there. But every time I go there, I want to go to that library because they got an A1 library system in Las Vegas. You go there, and they I don't know if they're going. I see a lot of use of it when I go there, because I can go to any of the libraries, and they have a lot of them around Las Vegas, because they have a lot of money there, and they are obviously investing in the roads. I don't see any. I don't see what I see in Flint. Call them potholes. Call them potholes. But really, ditches, bomb craters. Is there really a difference? Because anytime your tire goes down into the pothole, is there a difference between the pothole and if in a bomb crater. I mean, look how deep. Look, these potholes, the streets in this. I don't know why I'm paying for uh, license to drive on the roads. I don't see any use being made of the money they're raising. Supposedly the roads are supposed to be fixed, and they fix them every year because every year they get torn up. This is full employment. They do the same road, the same roads. They block the roads every year to repair the same roads over and over again. And then, I mean, this is a game. This is a scam. I'm getting to think everything they're doing in this country today is a scam. Everybody's hustling. The commentators, you would think that the commentators that are supposed to be holding the line, Mark Levine's supposed to be a constitutional scholar. If he's that, I'm gonna tell you right now, tell them to call me because I don't see any evidence of it. Not with what he said last night on Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2. And I'm going to read it to you and tell me where in that statement in the Constitution did you hear in Mark Levine's mouth last night. And people told me, people get on my post and told me I should read his latest book. I'm going to read his latest book on power. They told me to read the book he wrote before that. I read that one, the one before the last book he wrote, the one called Unfreedom of the Press. I read that book, and I don't think that he was honest. In the book is well documented, but he was not honest even in writing that book, because the claim he's making is that we have a tradition of a free press in this country. It's not proven in that book he wrote. And I'm going to read his latest book on power. Because I'm interested in what he has to say, but I don't have respect for him. When you start talking about, and this is what he was talking about. He was talking about Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2, and they were talking about. It was supposed to be about the auto pen. This is what the conversation was about. The auto pen president that Biden was. And we're trying to now determine if what Biden signed into law has any credence, because now they're saying the Constitution allows for the auto pen to be used in the signing of a law as long as the president is present at the time of the auto pen being used. I will tell you this. If you say that to me, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't use profanity, but I'm going to curse you out because you don't know who you're talking to. You can say that to a lot of people. I consider you to be insulting my intelligence to tell that to me. You can say it to a lot of the others who call themselves constitutional scholars, but you say it to me, I'm going to curse you out. And I don't use profanity. I mean, I can't believe people on TV with these programs saying that the president can use the auto pen. The auto pen can be used to sign a bill into law as long as it's signed in the presence of the president. He just got to be present while the auto pen can be used. I'll tell you when the auto pen can be used. The auto pen can be used when the president is signing things in volume, such as he want to send out things with his signature so people can get maybe a hat or get some Christmas card type of thing, and you want to do an auto pen because you don't want to tie up the president's time and have him signing one thing after another, but that has no official standing. It's just the president signature. So you can say the president. I have a signed uh, shirt from the president, cap from the. That's fine. There's nothing official about that. But when you start telling me that the president can auto pen a bill, long as he's sitting there while the auto pen is being used, you said to me, I'm gonna tell you, you said to me, and you're not gonna be. I'm not gonna be happy with it, and you're not gonna be happy with it because I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be very profane, and I'm not a profane person. But that would get my dandruff up. That would get me started, and I'm a. I'm gonna be playing the dozens at that point because you cannot say what they were saying on these programs this weekend. Presumptive immunity. And absolute immunity. If that were true, then the framers would not have been able to put in the Constitution the check upon the authority of the three branches of government, which are co-equal, and therefore the power is aggregated into three different chambers of the federal government, neither one of which can, because of the co-equality of the three departments, they cannot be called to account because they're co-equal. So which one can call the other to account and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do within their corridor of power, which is hedged from the other two branches and not to be held to account, other than the fact that there's an impeachment process. And now they're saying about what they're talking about with presumptive immunity. They're saying that you can't even invoke articles of impeachment because you have to look and see if that arena can be entered into by the legislative branch of government. They can bring impeachment about by invoking it against the judicial branch of government and the executive branch of government, because then they're not going to figure out if that can be charged on impeachment, because you need to you have to make sure that you are doing the particulars in the charges that you're making. You know what? You listen to fools. You listen to absolute fools. And there's not one of them, not one in the country on my level. And these fools on that program last night had better not even try to say to me what they were saying to the general public on that program last night. Presumptive immunity. And yet at the same time, they're saying that all are equally yoked under the law. There's no immunity of anybody under the law in this country. And there's no position you can hold where you can be therefore in a position above the law. That's what they're saying. And nobody but an empty-headed idiot who say that. And then when they start saying that Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2, which says, let me read it to you where I can make sure that I use every I and that's there and across every T that's there. Let me read to you what it says, and you see if in that language does it say that you can do an auto pen to sign a bill into law as long as the president's sitting there while the auto pen is being used. You show me. Give me a break. You give me a break. As long as the president is sitting there, the auto pen can be used as it's being used to sign a bill passed by the Congress into law. The auto pen can be used. Now you show me where that's found in the document. I'm going to read it to you. You show me where, Mark Levine, you show me where that's found. You were saying that last night. You show me where that's found in the document. And you were so proud of yourself for having stated that it was found in Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2. And I give you credit for that part. But I'm going to read what it says. And then you tell me where you found what you were talking about in that program. Because I'm going to read this to you. And here's what it says. Man, every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate, because until that happens, it's not even referred to the president's desk. So every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it becomes law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approves, he shall sign it. Now, you tell me where it says anything in there about an auto pen. The auto pen is fine if you're doing assembly line signing of the president's name in anything else, but the Constitution, Mark Levine, orders the president of the United States. I don't want to use these words on the air. Do you read? Have you read these words? Do you understand these words? Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it becomes a law, be presented to the President of the United States, period. There's a period there. If he approves, he shall sign it. But if not, he shall return it with his objections to that house in which the bill shall have originated. And of course, all bills that have to do with revenue must originate in the House of Representatives. We'll deal with that some other time as to why that's true, but that's the requirement. return to the house in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. It has to be reconsidered now. If the president objects to it because he is the executive branch of government, holistically is embodied in the single individual who holds that office, co-equal to the other two branches. They have multiple members to it, but the president's position is unique in terms of a single member representing the executive branch of government. Is that true? You scholars agree with that? If the president, as the executive office holder, objects to it, although it's passed by a majority vote in the House, there will be 218 members. If the members all are voting for it in the House, there are 435 members in the House, so 218 members, let's say all of them have voted, and then have a majority vote there, so at least 218 members have voted for it, if all were voting, but a majority vote, whatever the vote was. And then in the Senate, 51 members have voted for it. And so if the president objects to it, given all those numbers that were involved in this passage, when it's returned to them, having been passed by the number of members required in a majority in each of the two branches of the legislative body, when it's returned to them with the president's objections, the power of that office requires them to reconsider it based upon the objections. And if you want to override the objections of the president, it now ups the ante to what's required to pass it over the president's objection. That's power of the president of the United States. So to repass it over the objection of the president, because now there's a different caveat added to the mix, the president's objections being added to it. Now it takes a 2/3 vote in each of the two branches of the legislative branch of government to override the objection of the president of the United States. That then means it would take 290 votes to repass it in the House. And it would take 67 votes, earlier 51, now 67 votes to override the president veto in the Senate. And it must take those two votes, 2/3 in each of the two bodies, to override the objection of the president. And they're saying that this can be, the president can have the order pen to do the work here. Man, I'll tell you something. It's all I can do. It's all I can do. To restrain myself. Because I did not go to school for all this work to have that canceled out by fools misrepresenting the document. And I'm calling them on it publicly. You show me, Mark Levine, where what you were saying last night in your program can be sustained in the Constitution of the United States, that you claim what he called you the Great One. You show me where it says in here that you can have the order pen to sign the pardons or the order pen to sign anything in the law. Show me where that's in the document. It cannot be done. I'm saying it, and all you scholars that are saying something different, come see me. You know what you're doing here? You're doing what George Orwell talks about. This is Orwellian speak. Not in 1984, only, but a Williams speaking animal farm. Where you get in the power, and when you're outside, the specifics are more in place. But when you get in power, you begin to redefine the lines around which the rules are in fact drawn. So that in Animal Farm, the way they did it was that they were not they're going to resist the comforts of the farmers when the animals rose up. The proletariat idea was the farmers were overthrown, the animals rose up, the proletariat, the workers overthrew the farmers, and they're going to make retribution, but they're going to make laws that will, in fact, they're going to go in there and do better in terms of following the laws than was done before they took power. So they decided they're not going to do things that corrupt their power. So they noticed that the farmers were sleeping in bed, so they decided that they would not do what they did. But then we'd be sleeping in beds, but maybe without the cover, or they would do some other act, and it would not be in the same way in which it was done by the just making addendums to what they'd agreed to prior to. So the rules can be shifted from one thing to another to accommodate now the practice because they're not following the singularity of what was in fact the guideline before they got power. But not having power, they can redefine how the lines are to be drawn around the power that's being wielded. And these politicians think they can do the same thing. The Constitution, the lines can be moved so that it stops being what it says, and now it's what they're saying. That's why they keep running when they get up there talking. I notice how quickly when they're talking on TV, how quickly they run from what the Constitution says and start in almost like the next sentence telling us what the court has said, as if there's co-equivalency to what the court said and what the Constitution says, as if they're co-equal, as if the court is co-equal to as if either branch is co-equal to the Constitution of the United States. They're co-equal to each other of the branches, by the way. Do you agree with that? You got three co-equal branches of government, but there's no branch of government that's co-equal to the Constitution of the United States. Do you scholars agree with that? I'm sorry, folks. I know I'm getting I know I'm getting worked up, but this has got to stop. These people on television and they're misleading an entire nation because they got a microphone attached to their mouth, and they have tremendous responsibility because they're talking to people in the tens of millions of people, and they don't know anything of what they're talking about. They're trying to they have left it up to those to tell them, and that puts a tremendous burden on those who are talking through these mediums, because if they are getting it wrong, they're misinforming an entire nation by what they're saying. There's nothing in this Constitution talking about presumptive immunity and absolute immunity, partial immunity, and no immunity. Because let me tell you this, and you scholars see if you agree with this: no one has any immunity in this country. Not the president, not his cabinet, not members of the Supreme Court, and not a member of the legislative branch of government. I'm going to tell you this: and we're talking straight talk here. Once you start talking about immunity, then you're talking about people who have been elevated up to the level of kings. And you now have disarrogated, abrogated, and cancel out the 7 years that we fought in a revolutionary war in this country to cancel out the fiat government we lived under King George III. And then in one fell swoop, they just wiped that out because they're claiming that they're actually now making a claim that George Washington, our greatest president, did not in fact stand against that principle himself by refusing to become a king. That's what George Washington standing down after 2 terms really means to this country. This was a gift this man bequeathed to this country by stepping down. Because by stepping down, he was disavowing that premise. I'm not going to ask you, scholars, if you agree with that, because you've already shown that you don't agree with it. Because if you did that, you would not be so quiescent when they're putting Abraham Lincoln up there as our greatest president, and that is a dismissal of that. Somebody needs to read my post today, because I had to go into something that nobody else do. I want to say that no one else, I'll say no one else it showed that they're qualified to understand what all of the hoopla is about in terms of this redistricting that is now supposed to be taking place in Texas, but the Democrats have disappeared from the scene in order to forego them having a quorum in which they can meet to bring about the redistricting. And why everybody has, in fact, all these other states, so I mean, not all of them, but some of the other states and their governments are taking a stand against it as well, and saying, like Holcomb in New York, this flake out there in California, that's Newsom, a total flake. The man wants to be president. I don't know what country. He's certainly not talking about this country, unless this country will have in the future totally lost his mind, because if this man wants to do to this country what he's done to California, that's DOA. That's dead on arrival. This is an abominable situation that we're dealing with right now, where people think that they can simply they can claim to be embracing the Constitution while at the same time dismissing it while embracing the document. They say you're going to embrace in the document and at the same time dismiss what it says. And you can't have it both. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. It's impossible for you to have a constitution and then dismiss it by claiming that it says what it does not say. And it does not say anything about presumptive immunity, absolute immunity, and partial immunity, and no immunity, blah, 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 blah. Where's any of that in the document? I tell you where, nowhere. These people are they're making this stuff up. Mark Levine was making up this stuff last night about Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2. Ain't nothing in there that talks about an auto pen. You can use the auto pen, but not for official business. You don't want the president. The auto pen can be made use of. It has its place, but not in officialdom, because in officialdom the Constitution comes into play. It doesn't come into play when the president want to sign. You want the president's hand to fall off. He's got to sign signatures for this and everything else, and then run the country at the same time. You don't want the president getting bogged down, so the auto pen can be used. It's been invented so as not to bog the president's time in. But when you start talking about the auto pen can replace what the document of the constitutional document says, the president is required for the president to bring about the enactment of a law passed by the lawmaking body of the United States, and for him to, in fact, sign that into law, because it needs a signature in order for that to take place, and it can be done by the president not assigning his signature, but he can do an auto pen to do it. Man, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm trying not to be profane, but that gets that you cross a line as well. But I'm not gonna cross that line, but you cross a line. And there's nothing in here about an auto pen. I'll tell you this. All those pardons that were done by an auto pen is just cover, because they don't want to call these persons to account for what they did. I'm talking about Merrick Garland. I'm talking about Alejandro Mayorkas. I'm talking about Clapper. I'm talking about John Brennan. Everyone is a thug. And there were people that were hurt by them suspending the Constitution and violating people's civil rights in this country, throwing people in jail, throwing people in jail for exercising their constitutional rights. You can't be more twisted and vulgar and obscene than that. And nobody's put together why they're creating so much fuss over this redistricting in Texas. But let me tell you why they're doing it. And you scholars listen very carefully, because I'm Merrill Lynch here. They're pitching up a fit, because if Texas redistricts and by gerrymandering, which they have the right to do because the party in power has been gerrymandering. You ought to see how some of those districts drawn in California, in Illinois. Go look at those states. New Jersey. Did I say New York already? Yeah, go look at how those districts have been gerrymandered. But if you draw those lines in Texas and you redraw them and so on and so forth, in that they keep talking it's a purple state. It's not a purple state. It's a red state. But if you draw the boundary lines based upon the vote that Donald Trump got in these states here, the representation in the House is going to change, so that what is now a very slim majority becomes a larger majority of Republicans in the House. And if that happens, it puts the impeachment of Donald Trump out of reach because they plan to go after this man. That's why they're fighting this redistricting, because they plan to go after this man because they have not yet gotten over what happened in 2016. That's a fact that as I'm sitting here. I wrote about it in my post today. And there's not one scholar in this country that's qualified to challenge me on what I wrote. Not a single one. You can say what you want to say. I'm just telling you the truth. And they're not going to challenge me on it. None of them are going to challenge me on that publicly. They're not going to challenge me on it. Because I'm going to tell them this. Because none of them are qualified. And they think you have to be Harvard or Yale, Cornell, Columbia. What are some of these others? These Ivy League universities, which I used to have a lot of. I had put, well, I'm gonna go into that, but I used to have a lot of respect, thinking that that was the ultimate. But I now realize that that's because the government has made it that. They pull from Columbia. They, when they the journalism, the journalists, they pull from Columbia for that. For those that go into the judicial branch, they pull from Columbus, not Columbia. They pull from Harvard, and you've gotten people on there that are Harvard graduates, like Frank Furler and some of those persons, and we're supposed to be frightened by the fact that they're Harvard graduates or people that taught there that are not even PhDs, like Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is not a PhD. Alan Dershowitz, I don't even think I don't. I'm not going to say that he's not a JD, but I don't even think he's JD. But I know what he's not. He's not a constitutional scholar. Neither is Jonathan Turley, nor is John Rue. These are the ones they put on TV, and they put on TV because they're a bunch of airheads. They're a bunch of airheads. And there's not one of them on my level. You can take that letter alone, but you won't hear me saying the things they're saying about an auto pen can be used as long as the president's sitting there. The auto pen can be used, and so on and so forth. If the auto pen has to be used because while the president's sitting there, you need to invoke the 25th Amendment then, because if the president has to sit there while the auto pen is being used, the president is showing a disability and he's not yet fit to be president, and they should call him on it under the 25th Amendment, and that's why it's there. Why would the president be sitting anywhere and the auto pen got to be used while he's sitting there? It got to be present. They said the president has to be present. Where is that in the document? No one would say that. No scholar would say that about the the president has to be present, and then the auto pen can be used. Where is that in the Constitution of the United States? You are William scholars. I didn't change it from television scholars. You're now an Orwellian scholar, and none of you are qualified to tie my shoes. saying this stupid stuff on on television. It's a mockery. You can read it for yourself. Go read it for yourself and see if there's any wiggle room in what is being said here. The president must sign it. He must sign it. Without it being signed, it cannot be a law. And there are a lot of things that were passed during the Biden administration. You got to come off those books if you're true to the Constitution, because it was passed without it being officially passed by the president, who has a signature of that, which is part of the separation of powers and the check and balance built into that. Because when the president signs it, he's checking on. He's part of the check and balance system that our Constitution is based upon, the check and balance, so that no branch of government can go out of control. That's why it's there. But it did not mean that we'd have these mealy mouth people. What they never counted on is the Constitution being totally dishonored by being dismissed and thrown out. The document is being placed into exile. That's what's happened to the Constitution of the United States. They think they can simply order it out of existence as long as they seem to be paying obeisance to it. They can just simply order it out of existence as long as they say, well, the Constitution allows this. Well, it doesn't allow that, as a matter of fact. And you can't show me where it allows for anything. If you can find ought to pen anywhere in there, I will eat the whole document, which would be about eight by 11 pages. That's because the original Constitution can be put on about 8 pages. If they're 8 by 11 pages, you can put those documents on there, because they were very concise in writing the document. And there's no reason why anyone would not be able to understand it, because they didn't write it in Greek. They wrote it in plain English. And they're trying to act like nobody can understand it, but the scholars can understand it. And then the scholars are telling us anything in it. And when we go to look at the document, I don't have to go look at the document. I'm not as sharp as I once was. When I came out of grad school, I could quote this language up and down. And there was no and when you're doing your dissertation and you are getting your doctorate, what you're doing here is basically their mouth was open. It was like somebody said to me over in Africa. As a matter of fact, this last time I was there, asked me if I was human. Because I believe in stating what is to be allowed and not to be allowed, and telling you why that is true and where it can be found. I don't want any guesswork. And when they start saying things like what they're saying, the first question that comes up in my mind is, where can it be found, and where can I find it outside of in your mouth? Because your mouth is not the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution is a written document. You got to show it to me in the document, and you can't show it to me what you're talking about, because it doesn't exist. The ought to pen doesn't exist. Presumptive immunity, that doesn't exist. You made it up. Total immunity, that's made up. Complete immunity, that's made up. And neither one of those, whether you say total, presumptive, or no, whatever you say about it in terms of there's a caveat to immunity, if it's not no in front of it, then that's made up and does not fit what the Constitution requires, because there is no immunity of any person in this country who's immune from the law. None. Zero. And you can't find it in the document. You'd be surprised what's running in my mind that I'd like to say, but I'm not going to say it. But that is so profane. And some of the people that are saying that need to be brought to kneel before this document. I cannot believe people that claim to be constitutional scholars are saying these kind of things to the whole country and getting away with it. And they're on there week after week. It's not like somebody would say, well, they said this, we're not going to have them on next week because they misapplied the document this time. So that document cannot be this abused that way. So we're not going to have them on the following. They're on there the following week saying the same thing. It took Alan Dershowitz is still on TV saying what he's been saying forever about impeachment. Yeah, but still saying it. You need to have treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors to bring about impeachment. Show that to me in the Constitution, please. Just show it to me in the Constitution, where that's a requirement for impeachment. No, I'm telling you that nobody's written about this in terms of why there's so much hoopla over this redistricting taking place in Texas. But have you noticed that Holcomb in New York is joining into it? She's objecting to it. That's taking place in Texas. Texas is a sovereign state, and they're getting involved in it. But why are they getting involved in it? Because they understand the implications of it. Because they have in mind to do a third time what they've already done, to impeach Donald Trump. Because by impeaching him, they distracted him from his agenda. And all they have to do to bring about his impeachment is to, in fact, have enough votes in the House to bring that about. They're not going to be able to convict him because they need members in the Senate to bring about conviction. And it's going to take 2/3 of them to convict the president. They're not going to be able to get that. But they know that they are not going to get the conviction. What they want to do is put skids on the agenda this man is promoting. And that's what this is about. That's why so many are joining into it, because you're making further and further out of reach, so that 2026 they cannot make the correction to do what this guy, Al Green, is saying, that pointing his cane at Trump and threatening this man on the floor of Congress and pointing his cane at the president and making a threat like that, to which I think he should have been arrested on the floor of the Congress in front of the American people, because that's a threat against the president's life. That's a felony. You want to know why they're shooting at these presidents? Because of that kind of disrespect by the elected leadership of this country. But they're playing long ball, and long ball is keep the numbers so that they can be altered, so they can come after this man after the 2026 election, because if they can hold down the redistribution of the districts, where they're not aligned to add more Republicans to the House, not that the Republican Party is anything, then nothing either. But you cannot impeach the president because only two Republicans not more than two Republicans gonna go over there with any impeachment. And that would be uh, uh, Clark in Maine and Murkowski over in Alaska. They are over there in these sitting in these liberal power enclaves, and they're afraid to be seen as too strong in the Republican Party. So they try to act as if they're moderate. What they really are is that they're traitors. But they have to be more about finessing. So they might go over there with this, and so the margin of from Trump being impeached a third time is small, but it will grow if those numbers of those districts are redrawn in Texas, and they are now sending more members because redistricting would mean more Republicans are going to be sent to the House, and impeachment is then put back further, become more remote by the gerrymandering that is being done, that will be done if they bring those Democrats, if they arrest them and bring them back to Texas, which they should be arrested and brought back in, or to do the other thing, which is even more drastic and should go on, and that is to declare, since they have vacated their positions and their responsibility, to declare their position nullified by them abdicating their legislative responsibility and opening it up for a revote and throwing them out of office, which is what should go on and can go on, because the states have the right to set the parameters around their leadership. You see, we think we can impeach members of the House and members of the Senate. It cannot be done. The states have that prerogative to recall them and so on and so forth. You cannot do that through the impeachment process. I just want you to know that cannot be done. You have to read the Constitution to understand that. A lot of people believe that can be done through the same process through which you carry out the impeachment of the president and the members of the Congress. But that cannot be done because the Constitution calls for the impeachment of the president and the vice president, singles them out, and then civil office holders of the United States. That does not mean anybody in the legislative body, because they're not civil office holders of the United States. They're civil office holders of the states that sent them there. That's a distinction to be made there. You can tell. You just have to read the language very carefully to figure that out, which they don't even understand that. Okay, anyway, I'm too worked up here, but I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not gonna treat this document the way you're gonna throw it around like you're doing and get away with it, because George Moss is gonna call you on it, and when I call you on it, there none of you qualified to call me on what I'm calling you on. They're not able to do it. Okay, we got to get out of here, but I want you to be aware of that as we go forward, because they're playing long ball, and they want to bring this man down, because this man has yet to be brought down to the level they want to bring him down, because he wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, given what they had in mind in 2016, but it wasn't carried out the way they had planned it. And I wrote about that in my post today and explained what really was taking place in that time period, something nobody else in this country has gone into, and I went into it, and there's nobody going to come in behind it and challenge it. That much I can guarantee it. Okay, I got to get out of here until next week. I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.